Can you express your love of writing?
Yes, it's something that I've loved to do ever since I was a little girl. Always very unusual though, because I love fantasy and science fiction. And when you're at school, your teachers don't really appreciate that kind of writing. So I was always told off for being a bit fanciful. And over the years, that sort of put me off rather a bit. But I still kept enjoying reading about it, and I've always kept writing as a sort of the little rebellious streak in me. And it sort of really come to fruition by meeting up with the Writers' Circle. I was lucky enough to sit next to the president of the Writers' Circle, and she said, "Why don't you come along and find out more about it?" I've just loved it ever since.
And what would you say is the benefit of a Writers' Circle?
It's the networking, it's the listening to people, talking, hearing other people's work, the critique, and actually just being in the atmosphere. You just breathe it in and you come out feeling inspired.
I always find criticism hard to take, being a bit of a prima donna. Is it hard to take criticism of your work?
It is if you're a bit precious about it, because sometimes you love a particular piece of work and you can't believe that someone might say, maybe you should change this a little bit. But you do change it. You think, well, yes, actually what they've said is good, and it makes the story even better. So you just have to accept that it's not personal, even though your story is very personal to you, and you've got to let go of it a little bit.
And do you write every day? Do you write once a week? Do you bring a notepad with you?
I try to write as often as I can. An author I met once said to me, "Why don't you write whenever EastEnders is on?" And that's a really good idea. So it may only be half an hour or an hour every couple of days, but it's a really good way of doing it. So I try and make the point, whenever something's on that I don't want to watch, I go up and write for at least half an hour. Because I do tend to get disturbed quite a bit.
It does tell its own story. I do like writing poems that rhyme as well, and usually quite topical. Sometimes they're really serious about something that means a lot to me, and sometimes they're just really topical and funny. And as a child I always wrote poems, and I really inherited a lot of the way I write stories and poems from my mum as well, so it's a little bit in the family, you know. And I think there's a connection between reading and writing as well. The arts lap over. I'm an artist as well, so I would like to write books and illustrate them. And sometimes when I write my poetry, I like to illustrate it as well. So it's just a wonderful way to express yourself in words, and the way that your feelings come out, you know. And sometimes you can tell people how you feel in a poem, and where you might not even be able to put it into words face to face. And you know, poems are a really good way of expressing things, you know.
Yourself, a poet or a writer?
I'm a bit of both. I do like poem, and I do like to write. It's mainly things about yourself. I tend to like horror story, spooky stories, ghosts and spirits, and I do read a lot of magazine on and the true stories of their experience. And
is it hard to write horror?
It's not, but the characters are you've got to describe the characters. And for example, I work in a school, and I wrote a story about a mum starting afresh, and she decided she was going to leave. She's already left her husband, and she was going to bring up 2 children, and she lived at the back of a cottage that backs onto a graveyard. So of course all spooky thing goes on in a graveyard at night, so you could see all the characters coming out at night from the graveyard. So basically, and the poet, I do enjoy writing poem. It's about describing yourself, and it's about everyday life.
How about yourself? What are your influences and why do you write?
When I was at school, I used to do, like you do stories in the classroom. But when I left for work, never did no more. But a number of years ago, I went on a computer course down at Thurrock Adult College, and got the taste back for it just by doing the Grade 1 class, and joined Brentwood writing circle, and been writing stories, poems since, stayed in all the time, just enjoying the Thurrock.
The first three ladies we interviewed all expressed it as quite a lonely profession, so to speak. Would you agree with that?
I suppose it can be when you're writing on your own, even if you're not on the computer, you're writing on a notebook. Yeah, it can be a bit. A lot of the theory you have to do, you're doing it yourself, aren't you, really? And yeah, it can be.
But it's worth it in the end.
Oh yeah. You know, it's a good. If nothing else, it's a good hobby.
Well, I've written poems because I suffer from epilepsy. I've written a lot of poems about my epilepsy, and it gets my frustrations out the way I feel and makes me feel better. It answers a lot of my own questions because it makes you think and feel, express yourself how you really do feel.
Yeah.
So a lot of people do keep all their feelings bottled up inside them, and if you can write, you can share your feelings so much easier, your emotions.
And I'm dyslexic, and so I do find it hard to write, but going to a writer circle, it gives me a lot of confidence and inspire a lot of confidence, and it makes me feel good about writing, because obviously years ago I didn't write because I was dyslexic, but going to a writer circle, it really inspired me to write.
And it gives us all constructive criticism. When we write a story or a poem, we can go through it and listen to each other, you know, being constructive over it, and you know, we're quite happy to listen to a bit of feedback from each other, and a bit of bantering about of, you know, how we can change our stories and make them better. And sometimes it does stimulate you more, gives you more encouragement, and also if one of us has had a success, it does inspire the others to, you know, to carry on writing and get more things published, you know.